slide down. I need my box. So, because I have a friend that's school his box. And I have a box of girl copies. I think you might have turned the mic. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call our meeting to order. Today is February 21st, 2017. This is a budget work session of the North Kingstown School Committee. And if I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. And before you sit, if I could just ask if we could have a brief moment of silence for Dewey Cattell, who is a former transportation supervisor for the school committee, who passed away recently. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Osborne?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. McLaughlin? Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw? Here. James Wallace?
Here.
And Josh Norona?
Here. Thank you. And if you could call the calendar.
Tuesday, March 14th, there'll be a school committee business meeting at 7 p.m. And Wednesday, March 15th, there'll be a CLAC meeting at 12 p.m. at Davisville Academy.
Thank you. Any presentations or recognitions this evening?
I just want to recognize the girls' gymnastics team for state championship. Well done.
Congratulations.
Yes.
New freshman basketball?
Freshman basketball as well. Yes, that's true. And freshmen don't always have like a playoff system every year, but this year they did, and Kate came out on top. So,
Go Skippers. All right. Any citizens' comments? I don't see any. Raise your hand if you had something to say. Seeing none, I won't make you get up. Okay. Next we have routine items. If I could please ask for a motion to seal the executive session meeting minutes of this evening, February 21st, 2017. A second. All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. And I can disclose that we took no votes in this evening's executive session. For the consent agenda, before I go any further, I want to mention two quick changes to that agenda. Unless there are any objections, we're going to withdraw item C1, which was a appointment, and also C3, which was a personnel transfer. So if there's no objection in those, we will not approve. Any other exemptions to the consent agenda? B1 or 2. B1 and 2. For voice vote.
Uh,
Any others? Okay, if I could ask for a motion to approve the remaining items, which would be, now you're just left with C2 and 4. Motion and second. All of those in favor? Aye. Although, and no opposed, that is unanimous. So B1 and 2, I presume you vote to abstain.
Yes.
So if I could have a motion to approve items B1 and 2. And a second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
And Mr. Jones will be abstaining. So we have reached unfinished business. First of which, what did I miss? Sorry.
No, was that vote for B1 and B2?
Yes.
Okay.
B1 and 2 together. Thank you. So unfinished business. Anything on the 2016-17 school budget to report? So we have reached final decision time on our number to give to the Kingstown Town Council and approval of our preliminary budget. So what we generally do is we approve what we kind of call the easy items first, because we have to take certain votes separately. So the first is usually, is it grants or?
Grant.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So Mrs. King, if you could give me the current budgeted grant funding number.
The budgeted grant number, and this number does tend to change, but the number that we have funded that we would send to the town council and the superintendent's proposed FY18 budget is $2,415,850.
So for discussion purposes at least, if I could have a motion to approve the grant funding portion of the superintendent's preliminary budget in the amount of $2,415,815. A motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And then next, I believe, are the enterprise funds, right?
So the enterprise funds consist of just three enterprise funds. The food service fund, which is the biggest one. An enterprise fund means that the fund needs to break even or make money. If it has a deficit, we have to put in general funds on that. And the food service fund has done very well in the last several years. So we have food service, gate receipts, and sports camp funds, and the total of those three funds in the FY18 superintendent's preliminary budget are $1,059,300. 1059300.
So, again, for discussion purposes, if I could have a motion to approve the superintendent's preliminary proposed budget enterprise fund amount of $1,059,300. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this portion?
I would always add that I think, compared to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, it's still important to point out how much reversal's been on the cafeteria fund, that it no longer drains from the general fund stuff, and that's due to the hard work of a lot of people to do that, so I always think that should get recognized. It does concern me, though, again, that the amount it ekes out, that our ability to preserve some of that for capital improvements in the fund. So to the extent it runs a surplus, it should not be looked at as sort of an area to move other stuff, because we generally don't budget capital for those areas, except for the big capital stuff for athletics we're pushing. But in general, those funds need to sort of self-sustain their capital too. So.
Right, and we wouldn't be able to use those funds for anything but the food service fund.
Right.
So it's either saved for a rainy day or saved for capital, and we will need some capital items in the coming years, so that's the thought on that fund.
Any other discussion? So, all those in favor of approving? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We have reached the most difficult portion, which is the general fund. And Mrs. King, if you could give me the current superintendent's proposed number for the general fund.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two numbers. The total general fund number is $64,098,409. The other number I'm going to give you is the town appropriation number, because if you do decide to make any cuts, that's generally where we make the cuts from. And it's just important to note
That's the amount we request from the town.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's important to note that because that $64 million is comprised of state aid, Medicaid, and other numbers. So the town appropriation number in that $64 million number is $50,423,694, which represents a 4% increase over the current year's town appropriation.
Could you say that one more time? I just want to make sure I have it right.
$50,423,694.
Thank you.
Mrs. King, a 4% increase, what does that translate to in terms of the number?
That, 4% is $1.9 million, hold on, sorry, exactly. $1,939,000, I'm sorry, $1,939,373. So each percent is roughly $500,000.
So again, for discussion purposes, well, I think, I don't remember how we've done it in the past. If we started with a motion, do you remember the motion to approve that number and then work down from there, or did we just talk first? I wasn't sitting in this chair last time.
I think you talked first.
I think that
Mr.
makes more
Gladstone,
sense, because then we
you
have a
did
motion at
separate
the
votes
end.
on
Okay,
each
fine. Yeah, that
item.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's just an item.
Do in case the votes first.
So let's plan on doing it that way. We entertain any motions of any specific changes to the superintendent's proposed budget. Mrs. King will crunch the numbers as best as she can. They'll know that, again, regardless of any questions we may have as to what the bottom line budget effect would be on anything that's proposed this evening, we need a hard number. So if it turns out that the estimate is wrong, we have to adjust some other line somewhere else to make any difference. So does anyone have any proposed modifications to that? I will throw one thing out there. I know that Dr. Jay, you had mentioned that we have upcoming a potential change within the North Kingstown Links program, that they're doing a reorganization that could result in some savings. And Mrs. King, do you know that approximate? I know it's not big numbers, but
It's approximately $15,000, which would be some staffing changes as well as some of the, one thing that they are billing us for as well. So the estimate is about $15,000.
so with folks' approval, I recommend that we make that adjustment now. So it would be a reduction of $15,000 to the initial proposed number. So I make a motion that we reduce the, is it various lines, or is it, I'm just trying to think of where, it's just links?
It was just the links, and I can tell you if you'd like, if you give me 1 second.
Yep,
I'll tell you what
we can be
object number
specific.
that is. 1 second. Back first here. That would be from object, actually it is from two, it is going to be from 2 lines. It's going to be from object 53701. And $53212.
So my motion would be to, I would give Mrs. King the discretion to allocate the $15,000 appropriately between those 2 lines, but that we would cut a total of $15,000 from objects 53701 and 53212 as a result of that reorganization. Second.
So can you help me understand
Yes.
why we would want to cut that?
We're cutting it, I'm sorry, we're cutting it because there are staffing changes that they're making internally on their own.
Okay.
And they are currently charging us for processing of BCIs for volunteers that they're not going to charge us for going forward.
Okay.
The district provides money to links, but it is a separate organization on its own. The person who is directing the program is leaving for another post. The reorganization would be less expensive than doing now. We are planning on having links come to the school committee this spring to talk about that issue too.
So
you're
could we,
aware.
could we use that 15,000 somewhere else? Okay.
Well, and if I can jump in, when I made the original presentation, part of what I wanted to make sure I covered was those items that just are not covered in this budget. Most of this budget, 1.7 plus of this 1.9, is doing what we're doing now next year. That's it. We're not, every year since I've been superintendent, we've had a lot of unexpected special education costs, particularly for out of district, and some staffing needs along the lines of special education. I've outlined for you and the town council need for social work staff, guidance, psychologists, and I'm not saying that, it's February. I don't know for sure what I'm going to need in September, but I can almost guarantee you that I'm going to need more. And I probably should have mentioned this before, Mr. Blasball went, but I hope that whatever we can find to skim off of an item, that we could apply towards some of these other needs. We talked about how the transportation issue and school start time, something that a lot of people have voiced their concerns about, is not addressed here. And I realize $15,000 is not going to get us even close to that. But, we talked about, the need for more robust marketing for the district. $15,000 could help there. Equipment needs at different schools, operationalizing our technology expenses so we don't have to draw from the fund balance for that. Those are all things that could use some help that we do not address in this budget. And I'm concerned about those things. So I've taken a lot of time to make my presentation, so I'm not going to take too much more tonight. But I just want to make a plug that those things still do need to be addressed, either now or in future years.
And also what usually tends to happen is between now and the time that the town tells us what, the number is, we usually have a list of changes because a lot happens in that time frame. We find out what our medical numbers are in that time frame, and hopefully it's a good, but we find out if there are any other issues with things that we didn't know when I gave you the budget on January 3rd. We might have a little bit more on state aid, so there's a lot to be done between now and then that could be good and bad, and unfortunately, I think in our experience, it's usually we're looking for even more money at the end of in May. But there's a lot that happens. This isn't even close to being a final budget.
And unfortunately, with the budget calendar that we have in our town charter, and Mr. Jones, you probably have something to say about this this evening. We are forced to make this vote at this time with a whole lot of very incomplete information. And it's not just that we're approving our numbers, not knowing what the town is going to appropriate for us, but it's more than that. We have no way to know at this time of the year what some of our very large expenses are. So, for example, like our numbers from the trust on healthcare expenses and healthcare insurance and things like that. So it's very much a very preliminary number, but it's part of the process in the beginning of our budget discussions. My reason for making the proposal that we eliminate that number, again, it's not a big number, but it is one reduction that I know is, because of a reorganization that they're doing over there, it's, frankly, they don't need the same amount that we've been giving them in the past, so that's the reason to reduce that.
So if we take it away from that line item, can we still keep it in the request?
It depends. So what we would need to do is, so once we reduce, my motion that's on the table right now is to reduce those line items, which would reduce the total town appropriation by $15,000. If you wanted to then increase another line item to pick that up, that anyone could make a motion to do that and go from there.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible to decrease this number. We can't go above 4. We can't go any more. But we can shift things around.
Right. So, yeah, I would want to just, if we're going to take it away from that line item because we don't need it, then let's take it away from that line item, then let's just not take it away from the request.
So we need to go somewhere.
So I'm sure we can find a spot for it.
Let's, the motion on the table at the moment, and I did get a second, I'm sorry, we got caught up in discussion, I think someone seconded it, am I correct? I lost track. Did we get a second?
I don't believe
No,
we did.
all right, then we still need a second for the motion. Now we have the second. Ms. Hoskins. We can talk about that separately. But so the motion on the table is to reduce those two line items by $15,000. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can say yes or no, or,
I don't know what I would say then. Nay.
well, but, I mean, okay, you could vote no, that's fine. Okay, so it is 3 yeses and a no from Ms. Stevens. Motion passes. So now, I mean, I certainly would entertain a motion to increase another line item
Yeah, definitely.
somewhere, but I mean, we need to put it somewhere.
I would recommend out-of-district placements,
Okay, do you want to make a motion?
unless you have something else in mind.
No, I trust your judgment.
You know, when September comes along, we know, what's happened over the summer for out-of-district placements. We'll know more about charters at that time. We'll know more about out-of-district, career tech, students that leave here, go to career tech. So at that time, about October, so we can decide that if there's any extra money anywhere, that can get reallocated some other way. But our experience has been that out-of-district is a rough number. The summer is when you have new families moving into the town. And I think with our big influx of residential, with big housing, a lot of housing development, a lot of housing being built in North Kingstown, it's probably a pretty likely scenario.
August is usually the time when I come forward with any adjustment in staffing numbers as well,
Yeah.
based on summer enrollment.
So do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, so I make a motion to reallocate the 15,000 to out-of-district funding.
Okay, do I have a second? Any discussion? I will chime in. I'm going to vote no. Not that I don't think that that's a decent place to put it. It's just that the purpose behind my making that be a small reduction is that odds are we're going to be faced with some very hard decisions when we get our final number. And that's an easy one because we know it's money that doesn't need to be spent where we had originally thought it was going to be. So I'm not ready to put it anywhere else quite yet. That's my 2 cents.
He's also very right about that.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I just feel like we're gonna get a smaller number no matter what, so let's not make it smaller ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think one thing is when we take that approach, then the town council takes it as license that they need to do our job.
Right.
So I think, there's an argument for going to the town council to say our special education costs have risen, and maybe that's a discussion that we need to have with the town council and separately, and the superintendent and his staff needs to have with the new town manager, and have a discussion about how do we handle really volatile costs that are hard to capture. Because I think, in addition to capital, where we sort of planned it and it's a funding issue, we kind of need a separate dialogue with the town council to go, what do we do when we get, right in here, this $80,000 for tuition for a child with displacement. In lucky years we may budget it and it doesn't happen, and we get accused of running a surplus. So I think we should send what we think we need over and then adjust where we have shortfalls with them that are really difficult to plan for as a separate conversation. Not that I don't disagree kind of with your point, but I just think process-wise that may be a better approach.
Any other discussion?
What was the percentage last year that they gave?
That we got.
Percentage last year that we got.
Because that wouldn't have included that 500,000, right?
Was last year
The year
full
that
day
you
care?
had.
So this
No,
year.
this year. Last year was not, yes.
This
So-
year is full day care and second
No,
year full day care?
this is the second year full day care.
The
This
years,
is,
the years really do merge
they
into each
do,
other.
so
Last year was when they
the
cut the 500,000.
the last fiscal year was when our operating budget was reduced by $500,000, replaced with a $500,000 town handled
Correct.
allocation that was eventually turned back over to us.
So let me just double check this number here.
It might be useful, if you have it, to know what our request was compared to what we've got as well. I might be able to find it too.
So what year am I in here?
So this is 2018, you're looking at 2017.
Right, so, last year,
Which is this year. This gets very
this year, the current year we're in, our town appropriation was $48,484,321. And the prior year, it was $47,287,802. That difference is 2.5% year over year.
And it looks like I don't have a preliminary. Do you have the number of what?
Well, if you take that plus the $500,000.
Was it only 500 they cut out though? Did they just take our proposed and just cut 5? I don't remember
Yeah,
if it's
they
that
did.
round.
They
Okay.
did, yeah,
So we were originally looking for about 3.5.
right,
And it was
because that's about it,
5,
right.
There was a capital.
Right, because it's roughly $500,000. So we ended up with 2.5, we asked for 3.5% over the prior year.
So there's a motion on the table and a second. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? No.
No.
Yes. One yes from Ms. Stevens, no.
No.
From me, no Mr. Jones, and no Ms. Hoskins. So the motion fails. Any other discussion or suggestions on changes to the fiscal 18 budget? And if not,
Well, I just-
discussion.
Yeah, I think, I'll say my 2 minutes and get off this again.
I knew you would. That's why I queued it up for
Which
you.
is, we sort of asked this of the town council last year, it being an election year. Asked the charter commission to meet and relook at the archaic language that's in the charter when it comes to budgets. We're done in an era of printing out paper copies and everyone needing weeks to read it and all that good stuff. I will simply say that one of the difficulties I have is there are potentially areas I see that maybe we could cut, maybe there's some efficiencies we get, but on the flip side, we don't know our healthcare number, we don't get that till March. We don't know our charter school numbers, that's not till mid-March. We don't even have the audit from the town to talk about the general financial picture, although I trust the superintendent and his team and Mrs. King's numbers that our audit portion is good, but we don't have the official town audit yet to do true comparisons with the FY16 budget. We don't even have our census, which drives the official school, right, Mrs. King, the school
Right.
aid numbers from the state, let alone the Medicaid projection rate, potential changes based on the new administration with healthcare issues, and any potential mandates that might come out.
We don't have our charter school tuition either.
Right, and we don't have the charters, even
The
the
tuition
preliminary.
or the number of
Right, we don't have the
students.
charter school tuition rates. Last year we got a 7% savings. Who knows this year? They may roll that back. We don't even know the preliminary charter school enrollments till mid-March, and that's assuming the charter schools give it to us, which they generally is hit or miss based on the charter school. We could cut some areas and then find that we need it elsewhere. And so my preference is to say, right now this is as good as we know. We need to have just a continuing dialogue with the town council to say, let's keep refining it on both our ends as numbers become firmer and more data becomes available. Because I'm just not ready to make some cuts without better grasp of the data. And I really think that this is going to be true going forward no matter what, and the charter language should accurately reflect the realities of how we have to operate in the environment we're in. And I'm firmly convinced that the town council can do their thing, and the voters can have their say, and people can be fiscally informed, even delaying the process 3 or 4 weeks.
Completely agree. And I have to note also that, this is the best we have available to us at this time. It's obviously going to change. And we have had years where when the trust numbers came in significantly lower, that we went to the town and said, we can tell you right now that we can reduce the number that we asked for because this changed. So we can certainly continue the discussion as the cloud becomes clearer and things move along. But by charter and by rule, we need to come up with a bottom line number. So,
Mr. Jones, would you like me to dig out that timeline that we prepared? You and I did a timeline about a year
that
ago.
they proposed.
We did.
idea.
I think, we have a new town manager, so I think it's worthy of a conversation between the superintendent and the town manager and his leadership team and the new town manager's leadership team, and with our chair and the town council president, to say, let's make the charter reflect reality. Because reality comes no matter what the charter says. It just comes later in the process, and we're doing workarounds that we could have avoided by waiting for better information. So I think it's a general principle that better data gives better outcome. And so let's try and do the best we can to reflect that.
Thank you. Any other comments or changes? Mrs. King, I have, if my numbers are right, $50,408,694.
As the town
General
appropriation.
Town appropriation, correct?
Mhm, yep.
And then consequently, $64,083,409 for general fund total, correct?
Mhm. And that represents a 3.97% increase over the current year for the town appropriation.
So unless we have further discussion, suggestions, or changes, discussion?
I'll say my one more minute.
Yes, sir.
I think, in highlighting some of the things, there's just an interesting discussion that's larger than ours. It's sort of a statewide discussion about the cost of choice. We sort of talked about charter schools and stuff, but, how much has the tuition to the Met gone up, right? And I think Jamestown's in the same issue with putting a Met school probably in a place that it doesn't need to be. And yet, for North Kingstown, that in 2 years is about $200,000, which we all could argue maybe $200,000 could be better spent somewhere else. Or, the town council, we could argue it could be shaved off the tax bill, whatever. But, there's really no accountability in some instances for the consequence of choice. I'm not going to get into the casting stones at different places, but essentially, the taxpayers and parents hold the district accountable for the outcomes of North Kingstown School District. The taxpayers don't get the same luxury of holding accountability to places that they pay to send kids elsewhere, especially the choice schools. And yet, that's been the largest increase in our budget over the last few years. And so, I look at $200,000 to the Met school in East Bay and go, that's really a larger discussion. But when you talk about where some of our dollars going, I think that can't be left out of the conversation.
Hearing no further discussion at this point, I would ask for a motion to approve the modified superintendent's preliminary budget general fund, which currently stands at a total appropriation of $64,083,409, and a town appropriation from that number of $50,408,694. I will make the motion.
I thought you were doing it.
I made the motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Now I have just one more comment to make, just so that we're aware. So in your big packet, there's also the capital budget, the same one that you
Have to
guys
say the same.
approved.
Yes.
So we will make sure that once this gets to the town council, the town manager, that request that we had for capital, because there's no capital in that general fund number, the $64 million. The capital kind of gets, it usually gets buried. We will make sure that that spreadsheet that you guys approved of the $2.3 million request is separated out, so that Mr. Mollis knows that that's a completely separate request. So we'll go over with that with him on Thursday too.
I have to say the same thing. And just to refresh your memories, I believe it was just before the two of you were seated on the committee. We sat down, we had a series of meetings, a series of discussions at our meetings about what we would be requesting as a contribution from the town to specifically fund our capital improvement project, with the understanding that we have to have a reliable funding source for capital projects, independently of our operating budget. They're not the same thing. We identified specific items from our capital improvement plan, came up with a number that we talked a bit about, and so it's going to be important, as Mrs. King said, that as a part of this discussion, we'll be requesting these two general fund numbers and the town appropriation that goes along with it, but that we're also specifically requesting from the town that they fund us in a capital improvement fund within the school department, so that we have a reliable funding source going forward to avoid some of the problems that we are currently facing, which is that we have these major capital improvement projects, but yet no funding has been given to us to do them. As long as it's on the budget.
Yes, it is. Just the preliminary, the full packet, is that on the website?
It is,
Yes.
and this adjusted one will be too.
Right. Could I just point out something, it's a big document, people have lost numbers, but
Great.
some small things that we've added that I think did a lot were, like individual school summaries. So parents who, are interested in their specific schools can see, what the enrollment changes are, what's being spent, what are some of the counts, the test scores, all that kind of stuff. You don't get that in a lot of districts. I think that's a, sort of great little summary on something for people to see that's buried in that big document. So.
And also, Dr. J and I are working on a new and improved executive summary. We've been wanting to do that. We have a couple of formats, a couple of templates, so with your final budget will be, be the same data, but it'll be presented a little bit differently. It'll be a new and improved executive summary. And probably in April or May is when you will be asked to approve the ASBO, the International Association of School Business Officers submittal for the Meritorious Budget Award. That document is nearly 500 pages long, and as a formality, you do need to approve that. It's, again, much more information than this is, but it all adds up to the same thing. So I'll link you to that in April or May for you to approve that before it goes to that group in July.
And along with what Mr. Judge just said, I want to commend the work that you and your staff have done. I know that some of the clarity and those summaries that you were just mentioning come directly as a result of the efforts that you put into that Meritorious Budget Award, which we've won 2 times.
Oh, we have one twice a year.
I shouldn't say we, because I had nothing to do with it. You won 2 times.
And our controller did the lion's share of that work, so that's a very proud accomplishment. We submitted the first time last year and won the year before last and won the award, and also won the award for FY16. So we have 2
You make
budgets.
sure that she
Anyway, yes. And as you said, while our budget is in a lot of ways, because budgets are difficult to read, a little bit obtuse, there are some excellent, really easy to get to summaries. When someone asks me how many kids are enrolled in what school, I pull up my iPad and bang on page whatever is that school summary, and you can yank those kinds of very important details right in a very easy to read format. So whether you care about object 53701 or not, those summaries can be extremely useful to anyone in the district. So I commend you for your help.
Thank you very much. One last item, we have 2 tentative dates for budget meetings as a department. So we go in front of the town council as the school department, as a budget of the town, department of the town. Mr. Mullis has given us March 20th and or March 24th. It's during the day. And usually just Dr. Ajay and I go. I don't know which date and we don't know which time, but those are the 2 dates that we tentatively have blocked off. I think they're saving the 24th in case it's a flow-over day. But of course, if you can make it, you certainly are invited to attend that. It's a public, open meeting.
And they have been, last year at least, if not 2 years in a row, they've been streamed online if you wanted to watch them, even if you can't attend in person. Anything else? If not, we have reached the end of our agenda, and I would entertain you. I see a hand. Oh, wait. No, okay. That's probably your living room.
Something about that IOD.
Yes, I left a voicemail when we broke.
Okay.
So we will talk to him. I left a voicemail. I should send him an email too. So we'll talk about that on the date with him.
So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.